Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to take a very different kind of journey, a slow, contemplative walk through Marilynne Robinson's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, Gilead. Imagine, if you will, a gathering of characters stepping right off the page to finish the profound, quiet tragedies of the human heart that they never quite resolved. Picture a quiet church. It's standing all alone beneath this soft, early morning light. The pacing of our story today is deliberately slow and deeply intimate. Inside a weathered parsonage, we find an aging Reverend John Ames, sitting in the absolute quiet of his study.
He's sitting there at a worn-out desk, putting pen to paper. He is writing one final, monumental letter to the young son he knows he won't live long enough to raise. And yet, as his life draws to a close, this man, a man who has preached grace his entire life, finds his conscience deeply troubled by one unresolved relationship, a man named Jack Boughton.
Part 1. The Limits of Goodness. So ask yourself, what happens when goodness becomes a shelter that hides our greatest fears and prejudices? When the community trusts someone implicitly for decades, they rarely ask what that person refuses to see. We really have to consider how a sterling reputation for goodness can actually create a profound kind of moral blindness.
And this is the exact tension his wife Lila Ames recognized. John knew all of Jack's past sins, but Lila saw that John was using those facts to permanently judge Jack. He was entirely refusing to see any possibility of a changed man.
You see, Ames was disguising his deep, personal fears as moral discernment. As an old, dying man, he was secretly terrified that the much younger Jack might replace him in his own family. And he dressed this bitter, personal jealousy up in the highly respectable clothes of pastoral concern. Part 2. Grace before the proof. Jack was carrying a secret family, and he desperately needed a safe harbor before he could prove to anyone that he had reformed. It forces us into a fundamental question. Must a person prove they've changed before receiving mercy? Or does true mercy only mean something when it arrives first?
Grace is not a reward for evidence. Just let that sink in. Reverend Ames, in his self-protection, wanted absolute certainty. He wanted hard evidence of Jack's repentance. But true grace always requires risk. If it waits for a guarantee, well, it isn't grace anymore. It's just approval.
Part 3. A failure of public courage. Now, the stakes for Jack weren't just spiritual. They were intensely physical and legal. He had a black wife, Della, and a young son. In the era this story is set, strict racial laws and deep societal prejudice threatened their very existence as a family. Jack returned to Gilead seeking to know if the town's highly preached faith could actually make room for his family in the real, unforgiving world.
Della offers this piercing observation here. Private kindness is completely hollow if it refuses to stand against public injustice. A compassionate word might comfort you in the moment, but if faith hesitates to confront the actual laws that keep wounding people, it fails.
Because, think about it, a blessing in a quiet room is beautiful, right? But it cannot secure housing. It can't protect a marriage from unjust laws. Private kindness is intimate and safe, but public courage requires sacrifice.
Across the generations, the courage to fight injustice simply faded in the Ames family. John's grandfather literally fought slavery with righteous violence. His father, traumatized by that severity, learned a deep fear of conflict. And by the 1950s, that legacy had devolved into a polite silence that only served those who were already safe.
Part 4. Burdens fathers leave behind.
Jack's father, Reverend Robert Boughton, loved his son deeply. But his tragic flaw was loving the son he wanted, instead of making the truth safe for the son he actually had. He grieved Jack as a disappointment while Jack was standing right in front of him, constantly prioritizing his own pastoral expectations over Jack's reality.
Listen to Jack's confession here. My failures became the place where everyone else's hopes collided. His entire identity was trapped in his father's disappointment. He was essentially forced to be the living symbol of broken dreams.
And this forces us to reflect on John Ames himself. Is his beautiful, book-length letter to his young son a true gift of wisdom? Or, by presenting his life as perfectly interpreted and wrapped up in neat theological bows, is he quietly handing his son a lifelong weight of expectation, a presence no living person can ever argue with?
Part 5. The blessing arrives late.
In his dying days, John Ames finally gives Jack his blessing. He lays a hand on his head and speaks his name with reverence. It is a profound act of spiritual surrender, yet tragically insufficient for Jack's real-world survival.
Della Miles perfectly balances the beauty of Ames's spiritual surrender with the stark reality of their situation. The blessing was sacred, the silence before it had consequences. It was a holy thing that Ames finally recognized Jack as a beloved child of God. But that private blessing could never undo the years of public silence that left Jack and Della's family earthly exposed and in danger.
Ames' true redemption wasn't in maintaining his perfect reputation, it was in finally admitting his envy, his possessiveness, and his limits. A truly good person isn't flawless, they are simply someone who allows the truth to tear down the shelter of their own reputation.
Ultimately, true wisdom in our final days is letting go of the illusion of control. It's offering love without demanding a perfect ending. It is refusing to imprison the future with our own unfinished arguments.
So, I leave you with this. When we finally accept that we cannot control the future, what gift remains worth leaving behind? It's a haunting question that forces all of us to deeply ponder the shape of our own legacies. Thanks for taking this quiet journey with me today.